All right, let's put together our D&D pirate ship. I guess it doesn't have to be for D&D, but you know, whichever game you're playing for, or maybe you just thought it's a really cool ship and you wanted to get it. So looking at the base, just make sure that you orient them. It's kind of foolproof because if you have the wrong, side, it'll be ajar. So just, dry fit it first before you put the glue on, and make sure that those seams are flush. And then that's pretty much it for the base. It's pretty straightforward. Having those little kind of pegs and holes makes this one really easy to put together, at least for the base. So now we're going to move on to the first level of the ship, the bottom deck. What I find to be easiest, since it's kind of several pieces, is to start with this upper layer first and have that on a flat surface. So you can see there I've kind of dry fitted it. In the center portion of the ship, you'll see a little gap. I kind of appreciate there being that little gap because that way you can make sure that you've got the pieces together correctly. So that little piece there with the front of the ship, you don't want to accidentally glue that in the middle because that will mess up the shape. So you'll see there's a bit of a gap in those two middle pieces. They have a matching gap. So that way it's easy to key them together so you know that those two go in the middle. I like using E6000 glue for the majority of the ship build just because I find that to be pretty sturdy and strong, and especially for my purposes where I'm shipping them pre-assembled in a lot of cases, it needs to survive shipping, so I found that E6000 is a bit tougher. The super glue is definitely great. It cures way faster. You don't have to sit there and wait for a few hours. But it is a little bit more brittle versus the flexibility from the silicone base E6000 works better for me as far as for shipping, and so keep that in mind if you'd rather just use super glue, because you're not gonna need to worry too much about your ship as far as like traveling with it or anything wild. Then by all means the super glue is probably gonna be faster and easier. All right, and then the last piece here is just that back piece. It's just one single piece. So I kind of wait for those pieces to kind of set first. And now that the glue's kind of set, now we're going to move on and glue those seams there. So it's not a huge contact point, not as big as I would like, but that kind of gets remedied a little bit once we put the other pieces on the bottom. So just do your best to line that up. The clips definitely help a lot. So they're just binder clips, I think is what they're called. You can get them at like an office store. They're super cheap. It's like $1 or $2 for a 10-pack or something. They're really helpful for this to kind of just help hold things in place, especially since the glue that I'm using in this video does take a few hours to kind of at least set. And I think on the packaging it says 24 hours to like fully cure. So yeah, so obviously with the video editing, you don't have to sit there and wait for the glue to dry. We're just going to skip that. Okay, so now it's been some time, so I can flip that over and the glue is set. That's a solid piece. I'm keeping the clips there for now, and I think I did that just as a safety measure because I was a little impatient, but if you give it enough time, the glue will be set, and it's a really strong bond once it's set. So now we've got the bottom pieces here. They kind of just follow the curvature of the ship, so you can kind of tell which part goes to the front because it has that little piece there. It's kind of cool that it has like this metal plate in the front, kind of a style of like ancient Greek ships or something. So first I'm gluing those two halves together, same for like the middle section and for the rear section, and then once those pieces kind of start to set, then I will add them on. Honestly, I don't know if you have to do it this way. You could probably just kind of skip that and just put some glue to glue those two pieces together like I'm doing, and then just immediately proceed to glue it onto the rest of the bottom deck. But anyway, it's up to you, I guess, how you'd like to do it. So I'm just showing a few different methods. So here I decided, I don't know why I'm taking the slow route, so I just immediately started putting glue on the different parts, and I'm going to just attach that directly to that section there. It is a little tricky, so I did get some glue on my hands, but it's not a big deal. So the most important thing is just do your best to align it with the edges, and you can kind of see how the pattern fits there. And so once I've got glue applied, I also recommend putting it, even if the edge is pretty thin, I think that's going to give you a much stronger build if you put a little bit more glue even on the edges there. And then same with here. So once you have this bottom piece fully glued and attached on, then the whole bottom deck is quite sturdy, once the glue sets, of course. And that right there is our bottom deck. So it's been some time, now the glue is fully set. I'm gonna also just take an X-Acto knife and clean the seams a little bit. There's a little bit of glue that kind of seeped out in a few spots, so I'm just gonna clean that up real quick. And that's another benefit with the E6000 is you can kind of just cut that away, and it's kind of like a soft rubbery thing. With super glue, that'd be much more difficult to kind of just clean up easily. All right, so now we're going to do the middle deck. This is 4 pieces here. So there's kind of like these 3 big pieces that do the middle here. And of course, as I was filming this, I realized I had some pieces of support that I forgot to take off. So it wasn't quite fitting properly, so I took it off camera to remove the supports really quick. But yeah, you're gonna have 3 pieces that are kind of like the main portion of that middle deck, where you've got like your gun ports, and then there's also an additional piece that kind of goes in the front. And especially for this ship, it's very stylistic. You've got some of the skulls and cannons that stick out of them. So I'm gonna just glue that on first. And I like gluing it on directly above the lower deck. So that way, if you're like, for whatever reason, slightly off, by gluing it and assembling it this way, the deck will compensate for the bottom deck. So they'll still sit on top of each other pretty flush. I found that if I glue them independently on a table, if for whatever reason something's slightly off, then when you go to take that second deck and put it on the lower deck, if it's a little ajar, it can be a bit frustrating to either try to fix, or you might just have a little part that's crooked. So by gluing it directly over the deck, that makes sure that you get a nice flush deck level as you go up each deck level. And we'll make sure that we're not accidentally gluing the decks to each other, of course, because we don't want to remove the playability. That's like one of the big features. Okay, so for the top, I guess top deck or main deck, there's 2 main pieces here, and then kind of a third piece that just for quality purposes, I print in 4 pieces. That's a little bit easier, so that the detail comes out better with how the printer works. So I'm just going to slide this whole thing over and show myself gluing that kind of room there. I think maybe that could be like the captain's quarters, potentially, or just some extra playable room there towards the front of the ship. All right, and so as we're getting the last bit of that room glued together, I'm not going to wait for it to fully set. I'm going to just put it on directly over, and again, that's just to make sure that nothing cures and sets slightly ajar to the other pieces below it. So we'll go ahead and put that on, and then now it's been some time, so the glue's dried, and I'm just lifting them up to make sure that the decks are all independent of each other, make sure nothing accidentally glued the wrong way. Then you've got just those extra pieces, and that's pretty much the ship. That's almost there. Then you've got that front piece I was telling you about if you want to ram another ship, kind of like the ancient Greek ships, like a trireme or something. And then that piece right there just goes right there. That's going to be where the bowsprit attaches. And then now for the masts. I will be honest, this part is a little bit more tedious in my opinion. Yeah, it's not too bad. It's pretty straightforward, but gluing the pieces together, it's a little bit more involved. Now, of course, if you've done like, Warhammer miniatures, it's not anything that bad. So, and that's not, I love Warhammer, don't get me wrong. That's not, I'm not hating on that, but depending on where you're at as far as what kind of complexity you've done with miniatures, this might be a little bit more up there with getting little pieces glued together. So for that reason, I'm switching over to the super glue because I need the faster cure time. And I'm also going to be using InstaSet, which is a little spray, and that makes the super glue cure instantaneously when I spray that on. So this first mast I'm putting together, I believe that goes in the rear, and it's pretty straightforward. For all the masts, they kind of have the same pattern. It's going to be your vertical pieces are going to be split in half, so you have to glue those together, and then just because it'd be difficult to print that, and like the printer doesn't do a great job printing vertically for something that has kind of a small area there. So I'm showing that first mast, and once you glue the vertical pieces together, then the cross beams that hold the sails is what I would recommend doing next. And it kind of follows the same pattern where lower down is going to be your bigger sails and bigger cross beams, and then as you get higher up, it gets smaller. So, and then also I've got the bowsprit in this bag. I think for future people that want to order the kit, I'll put the bowsprit in a separate bag just to make sure it's less confusing. But yeah, so the bowsprit's the same thing. You have kind of two halves that you have to glue together for the long main piece. And then once you glue those together, you attach it to another piece, and then you've got two small little cross beams that kind of stick out towards the front of that bowsprit with a couple little tiny sails. Apologize, I seem to have kind of filmed it not in the best place where the camera can see, but you'll see the finished bowsprit right there, and that goes towards the front. And then here I'm putting together, this is going to be the center mast, so this will be definitely the biggest piece of the ship. Well, the biggest mast, I guess, hence the center mast, the main mast. It has a nice little crow's nest, and the biggest thing to keep in mind is make sure that when you're gluing there's kind of two pieces to this mast, the bottom and then the top half. The crow's nest goes in between them, which is kind of nice because that helps seal it together. And just make sure that you align the hole properly so that when you're putting on that top piece, it goes facing the right way, so the sails all look uniform and facing the right way there. So with each cross beam, there are on the sails for the main masts, the forward, center, and aft. The bowsprit's a little different, but there's going to be three pieces of sails. So kind of the biggest one is the one that'll go in the center. If you pay close attention, you can see kind of where they line up with the cross beams. So if you want it to be like absolutely perfect, there are ways to line that up. Also, I'll make sure to have the PDF downloadable so you can have a nice image reference as far as how the masts are supposed to go together. That might be easier to follow along than the video. So I'll make sure that that's easily available for you. And you can just download that PDF and look at the instructions. So yeah, but once it's put together, the mast looks pretty good. And I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with how the ship looks. The masts are a little tattered, so it's kind of a little bit more of a, cursed ship. Maybe Davy Jones a little bit. Obviously, maybe not like the movies, like the Pirates of the Caribbean, exactly, because it doesn't have all of like the sea creature, ocean, vibes, but definitely tattered sails, and of course the skulls that are on the forward part of the ship. So definitely a fun theme going on here as far as like a fantasy pirate ship. So you'll see that goes on just like that. And I'm going to set that down, and then I'm going to put together the forward mast, which is going to be very similar to the center mast. Again, you have the two pieces that glue together for the bottom half of the mast, and then the crow's nest goes on top, and then above the crow's nest you have the top half of the mast, which again are two separate pieces that you have to glue together. And so I don't know if you could see that in the corner, I'm gluing together those two pieces, and then that's going to be the top half of the mast that I'm then going to stick into the crow's nest, and there's a nice little hole where that's supposed to go. So, and then you just need to make sure that you have it facing the right way so that your cross beams are nice and uniform on the mast. I definitely highly recommend using accelerant, especially for the sails, as they could be a little tricky to work with, and putting those on, especially if you want to just hold it in place and wait for each piece. I don't really have the patience for that, maybe since, this is, if I was building one for just me, then it might be a little bit different, but this is probably like the 10th or 15th ship I've put together to send to a customer. So so I've definitely found that it's a worthwhile time saver to use the Instaset or super glue accelerant. And again, that's easy to find probably at your local hobby store, craft store, or even on Amazon. So that's good to use. As far as the super glue, I personally like the Gorilla Glue gel. That's my personal favorite, but really any super glue will do just well. It's PLA plastic, so any super glue is going to have a really strong bond. So I'm just getting the last pieces of the sails onto that upper cross beam for the forward mast, and then that'll be all set. And then of course there's the Instaset to just make it cure right away, and you can see that goes up there towards the front. And then on the bowsprit, on the lower part, there's that skull piece that attaches, and then we're done. That's pretty much the ship all put together. Oh, and of course, let's not forget to glue on the forward piece. I really feel like I should know what that's called. But, kind of like the trireme or bireme kind of piece of metal for like ramming or something. So I'm not sure, aside from the cool factor, what that would necessarily do on this ship. If you're like a naval person, feel free to tell me in the comments. But I mean, it's definitely cool. So, and painting, it's a lot of fun because you get to do some cool metal effects on there. And so I'm doing a mix of both some E6000 as well as super glue. So the super glue can kind of help set it right away, because I've done it in the past with just E6000 and then watched it kind of slide down as it wasn't able to really quite set it in place immediately. So using the mix of glues helps to make sure it sets in place right away. And yeah, so I think once that's glued, if you're buying this pre-assembled, this will be the state that it will come in. So you can see it's pretty much all put together for you. And then really the last bit, just for the practicality of shipping, is going to be just putting the masts on yourself if you so choose. Otherwise you might prefer to keep the masts off, as that might be easier for playing on the table. Totally up to you, but either way, really fun ship. I love how it looks, and the playability on it is awesome. The fact that you can lift the decks apart makes it great for playing on the table, so it's easy to show. If someone goes below decks, you just splay the ship out on the table to show where different members of the party are on the ship, for example. So yeah, there it is, finished and ready to go. So I hope you have a great time with this ship. And then of course, painting, it's a whole different subject matter altogether, but that's pretty much how it goes together. So hopefully this is helpful if you're trying to put the kit together yourself. Thank you.